Week 17, Overview. The Reformation in Switzerland, England, and Scandinavia. This is a full week. We'll see the Reformation spread from Germany across Northern Europe. As the Protestant movement spread, many people wanted to take it further than Martin Luther did. As they started reading Scripture for themselves, Protestants found themselves disagreeing on more and more points with the Roman Catholic Church and with each other. People in different countries turned to Protestantism for different reasons. Sometimes it was all about worshiping God in spirit and in truth, but that wasn't the only reason people became Protestant. As the people in each little German state took a position one way or the other on Luther's teaching, their princes took sides for or against the Pope. Given the weak structure of the Holy Roman Empire, Protestant princes often suddenly found themselves a lot more free from outside interference. This caught the attention of rulers in other lands. King Gustav I of Sweden led his countrymen in a revolt against Denmark, which had captured Stockholm and ruled all of the Swedish lands. When Gustav became Sweden's first king, he exiled the Archbishop of Sweden and asked the Pope to confirm his choice for his replacement. The Pope refused, insisting that Gustav must reinstate the old Archbishop, which Gustav could not accept. Rome was a long way off, and Luther's teaching was spreading north. The king's advisers urged him to ignore the Pope and appoint his own archbishop. He did just that in 1531, just 10 years after Luther was declared an outlaw at the Diet of Worms. England turned Protestant too, just 3 years later. There, too, the break with Rome resulted from a clash between a king and a pope. Henry VIII of England didn't just want a new archbishop, though. He wanted a new wife. His queen, Catherine of Aragon, was the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain. She had been betrothed to Arthur, Prince of Wales, when she was only 4, 2 years before her parents sent Columbus to discover America. She was only 15 when she married Arthur, who was over a year younger than she was. Just a few months later, Catherine and her new husband both got very sick, and Arthur died. When a crown prince of England dies, the next son becomes the Prince of Wales, unless there's already another heir. Even though Arthur was dead, there was a chance that his young wife was already pregnant. Catherine told the authorities it could not be. She said that she and 14-year-old Arthur had never consummated their marriage. Arthur's younger brother Henry took his place as Prince of Wales, and then, by a special dispensation from the Pope, as the husband of Catherine. Henry's marriage to Catherine was certainly consummated. She gave birth 6 times. Her first child was stillborn, a daughter. Prince Henry only lived 52 days. Another girl was stillborn. Another son died soon. The next child was a girl, Princess Mary, followed by yet another stillbirth. By this time, Henry was getting worried. Catherine was aging fast, and there was nothing like a male heir to the throne. The last time a woman had inherited the English throne, 2 generations after William the Conqueror, it resulted in a bitter civil war. That was long ago, but all England still remembered the disastrous Wars of the Roses, which only ended when Henry's father took the throne. A male heir seemed essential. Henry decided that God must be judging him for marrying his brother's wife. Catherine said there'd been nothing between her and Arthur, but she could be lying. Why else would God curse their union? John the Baptist had rebuked King Herod for taking his brother's wife in the Bible, so why should the King of England be any different? Henry petitioned the Pope for an annulment, on the grounds that he was not lawfully married to Catherine. Catherine objected. Unfortunately for King Henry, Catherine's nephew had just recently captured the city of Rome, where the Pope was a virtual prisoner. The Pope, caught in a conflict between 2 of Europe's most powerful monarchs, stalled for the next 7 years. In 1531, as Sweden broke with Rome, Henry separated from Catherine, who was now 45 years old. In 1533, Henry married Anne Boleyn, the second of what would be 6 wives. In 1534, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy that separated the Church of England from the Church of Rome. A name to note in passing here is Sir Thomas More, one of Henry's top advisers. More was a humanist scholar and a devout Roman Catholic. He was a close friend of Desiderius Erasmus, who put together the Greek New Testament that Martin Luther and William Tyndale and other people used as their basis for translation. When Henry divorced Catherine, he ordered his subjects to swear allegiance to the new Act of Succession, which rejected the Pope's authority. More refused, and was imprisoned for over a year before he was tried and then executed for treason. The Reformation had come to England, sort of. Henry was no Protestant, and when he died, his only male heir only lived a few years. Edward VI was a sickly boy whose Protestant advisers knew he might not live long. They tried to set aside King Henry's will to make sure that the next person in line to the throne was a solid Protestant, rather than Princess Mary, daughter of Queen Catherine, who was as Catholic as they came. When the young king died at the age of 15, his Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, took the throne for 9 short days, and then was driven out by Mary, who spent 5 bloody years trying to bring England back under Catholic control. Switzerland had a different experience with Protestantism. The Reformation there was first led by Huldrych Zwingli, who shared Luther's passion for Scripture. Zwingli persuaded the people of his town of Zurich to strip their worship services of every element that was not specifically commanded by Scripture. In the nearby lakeside city of Geneva, a young French exile, John Calvin, helped set up a government for the city according to Protestant principles. Luther never set out to be a reformer, really, but Calvin did. Calvin systematically reviewed every Christian practice to determine whether it was really biblical or just the result of tradition. His Institutes of the Christian Religion have become the foundational document of a host of churches that identify themselves as Reformed. When Luther and his generation of reformers died, Calvin's Geneva became the center of Protestantism. It was a haven for many reformers fleeing persecution in their own lands and a model for Christian community. These theological refugees had a huge impact later on people we'll study in more detail, such as the Pilgrims and the Puritans who settled New England. Many expressions of Protestantism were heavily influenced by political factors. Nations threw off the yoke of Rome and established their own churches, the Church of England, the Church of Sweden, and so forth. A different strain of Protestantism took a very different tack. The Anabaptists were one group of Protestants that went against the grain of nationalism and as a result wound up being persecuted by almost everybody. The name Anabaptist means rebaptizers. Unlike Luther and Calvin, who followed the traditional practice of infant baptism, these Protestants read Scripture to mean that only adult believers should be baptized. That was too radical for most of the other Protestants, but that wasn't their only new belief. The Anabaptists took a radical position on a number of issues. They wanted to live strictly in keeping with Jesus' teaching, no matter what European traditions might allow. Jesus had said, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no," so they refused to take any kind of oaths. Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek," so they became pacifists, refusing to engage in physical violence for any cause whatsoever, including the defense of hearth and home. These Anabaptists were never really accepted in Europe, but they became a part of the American landscape. Mennonite and Amish communities in the U.S. still hold to most of the central Anabaptist doctrines, while the core concept of believers' baptism is anything but controversial in evangelical America. Whether it was unpopular or not, political or purely theological, the Reformation was spreading across Europe. Germany, England, Switzerland, and Scandinavia pulled away from Rome and have been more or less Protestant ever since. Next week, we'll take a look at some other countries where the Reformation met with more difficulties.